Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
This is Radio City Talk.
It's Mental Health Monday on Radio City Talk. It is Monday, so it's time to talk about mental health. And we have got a guest in the studio who I imagine is getting little butterflies in the stomach now. Not because of the line of questioning that I'm about to throw in his direction, but because he's got a big day on the way this coming Thursday, the 14th of September. By royal appointment, Michael Crilly joins us on the programme. He's Director of Inclusion and Participation at Life Rooms in Walton and now Southport. Michael, thank you for your time. It's great to see you.
It's good to be here. Thank you, Mick.
You have a royal visit. You've got Prince William. That's a HRH Duke of Cambridge.
That's correct. Yeah, Merseycare is absolutely delighted that we're going to welcome His Royal Highness, the Duke of Cambridge, to the Life Rooms here on Thursday. So obviously we're well aware that the Duke, the Duchess and Prince Harry have talked very openly and very powerfully around mental health issues in the last year or so, particularly through their anti-stigma campaign with Heads Together. So the fact that they're coming to us, we see is in some way recognising some of the work that we have in common with them.
So, I mean, there'll be things you can't say from a security point of view, but in terms of like getting a royal visit, did you apply for it? Do you get like a golden envelope arrives which says basically at this moment members of the royal family will show up?
No, these are visits that are researched by the Lord Lieutenant's office, depending on what particular interests they have for the royal family to explore. And obviously the Life Rooms is a fairly recent mental health innovation that Merseycare have introduced to the community.
Tell us about the Life Rooms, because driving past the Life Rooms, people drive past this all the time and people will go, oh, is that what it is? Because it's opposite the Walton Car Centre on one side. That's and people know it as Walton Library in various different guises as well. But that's where you are. What is the Life Rooms all about?
Okay, the Life Rooms is, as you say, in the former Walton Library, which is a beautiful building. It was a library donated to the city by Andrew Carnegie. Merseycare acquired the building just about 18 months or so ago now to develop as a centre for recovery, social inclusion and wellbeing, primarily focusing on the mental health and wellbeing of, yes, our service users, but also the wider community. So the kind of things that we do in the Life Rooms are to offer really practical, socially focused interventions and support programmes. So we have access to education programmes through our Recovery College, promoting people's self-management of mental health conditions, but also promoting the prevention of deterioration in those mental health issues, but also a range of advice and support opportunities with various partners looking at employment, advice around housing, debt, navigating the benefits system, occupying people's time meaningfully through volunteering opportunities, a whole host of practical issues, because these are the kind of things that actually not only help keep people well and support their recovery, but also give real meaning to their lives. You know, it's not enough that somebody should simply keep breathing. They have to have a life that's vibrant, that's worth having, that they want for themselves.
How do you make the best use of that building, which has got a lot of traffic will go past it? You're in a heavily populated area as well. How do you make it as open door as possible while giving people the appropriate services that they're looking for?
Well, one of the key things we've done is we've made sure that it's still a resource for the local community. So we're heavily connected into a number of community groups, schools, residents associations. We've continued to operate a measure of library provision, which has obviously been really important for people. People were anxious at the possible closure of the library, so that's been a great benefit to them. We've also maintained access to free IT, which has been a big thing, not only for our own service users, but also for local people, because particularly if you are required on a daily basis to do a job search, and that can have a real impact, and the cost of going to access free IT further down the road has real financial implications. That's a major benefit to the local community. And in addition to that, we have a cafe in there in the heart of it.
Yes, there we go.
And, you know, you can always tempt people in with coffee and cake.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you're based in Walton, but you've just got a new centre in Southport as well.
We have, yes. We've had over 16,000 people visited the first Life Rooms that we had in Walton. And we became increasingly aware of a need to have this across the Merseycare footprint. So we work in Liverpool, Sefton and Knowsley. So we are really keen to make sure that actually the opportunities we're giving in Walton aren't just simply focused on Walton. So working in partnership with Sefton Carers, we were able to take over a lease of a Grade 2 listed shopfront halfway between Lord Street and the Promenade. And we opened our second Life Rooms in May of this year.
Fantastic stuff. If people want to find out more about Life Rooms in both Liverpool and in Southport, the website liferooms.org has got loads of information. Liferooms.org. You won't be surprised to see that front and centre on the homepage is Prince William. You know, do you know what you're going to say? Have you practicing your bows and your curtsies and everything like that?
Not practicing just yet. We'll play that one a little bit more by ear.
Let me ask you about Prince William. And people mention Kate and Harry, the work that they're doing, Heads Together, and so on and so forth. You obviously work in mental health. What do you see as the value of them, their interest in mental health, and the way that they've spoken about mental health?
I think what is really important is that you no doubt have discussed this at length on this programme. There's still a huge amount of stigma around mental ill health, a lack of understanding, real ignorance that can manifest itself in all sorts of horrific ways. I think for me, when people who are in positions of responsibility, they're in the public eye, use that position to speak out, to try and challenge stigma, to improve the lot of others in practical ways, it makes a huge difference. So clearly you're dealing with one of the most famous people on the planet. To have him and members of his family speak out in very real ways, very human ways and compassionate ways, really gives other people permission to speak out, to share their own experience. It's very powerful.
Can I ask you about the site and the use of the site that you've got there? Now, everyone's operating in various financial constraints, and I'm sure that's the case with yourselves. Do you find there's a benefit by the fact that you are operating within essentially a community hub? That you're operating in a room where you would go in, even if you don't believe you've got any mental health problems, because you want to go in and use a computer, you want to go in and grab a coffee and a cake, and you want to go and get a couple of books out, maybe. But while you're in there, you're also aware that there's also a mental health hub. And while you're in there, you're seeing people who've got mental health problems. And guess what? In the main, they look just like everybody else as well. Do you think there's a benefit in the actual building? The fact that people are mixing together, whether they've got mental health problems or not, and they're doing it in an environment where you think, well, actually, mental health problems, there's that centre down there. Oh, they do great coffee down there. It becomes quite normalised, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't put it better myself. What we're trying to do here is say that actually people are people are people. Whatever labels you put against people, be it a diagnosis or a job title or whatever, is not the whole story. We're all human beings living a life. The fact that we are in a beautiful building that was already a hub of community without any kind of label is very, very important. I mentioned that the library was gifted to the city by Andrew Carnegie, great philanthropist who donated libraries and reading rooms throughout the English-speaking world. And Carnegie believed that people engendered change in their own lives through learning and education, and that you actually encourage people to learn through hope-filled environments. That's absolutely what we're trying to do in the life rooms. The fact that you don't know who is there for whatever reason can only be a good thing. Somebody's come in for a coffee, borrow a book, use the IT. They could be a service user accessing a course. It just doesn't matter. They're people.
We've got Michael Crilly with us on Mental Health Monday, Director of Social Inclusion and Participation at the Life Rooms in both Walton and a new centre in Southport as well, liferooms.org, if you want to find out more information about that organisation, and a visit on the way this Thursday from Prince William. Walton, let me ask you about Walton. If you look at a list of areas, constituencies, however you want to divide the country up, and you look at life expectancies, if you look at probability of joblessness, when you look at various different aspects in people's lives, you don't have to look very far up or down those lists to often find that Walton is in there. Statistically, you're more likely to have a whole host of problems if you live within that constituency, for a whole host, I'm sure, of many different reasons that go back decades and decades and decades. But how does that look from a mental health point of view? How might those sorts of issues that people might be facing within that community, how would they present themselves to life rooms? And how does that manifest itself from a mental health point of view?
I mean, in a variety of ways for us, and this is one of the reasons we were so keen to make sure that the doors were opened to the general public and not simply people who were Merseycare service users. So working with GPs, for example, has been a really key part of what we do. So more than 50 GPs in the north end of the city are referring people through our doors. And that is because mental health issues are becoming stronger and stronger and more prevalent in that community. So people who potentially do live without a job, who have financial worries, are on the benefit system, may find that has an adverse impact to their mental health and well-being. So you are finding that more and more need is there. What we find in Walton is that you're absolutely right from what you said before. People will walk through the door for a whole host of other reasons. They would never have associated themselves with a mental health organisation. However, when they come in and they see some of what is being done, they realise, well, actually, this could be something that could really help me. And that's really exciting, because if we can stop an almost inevitable decline into secondary mental health services by helping people introduce a really good, healthy way of living at the earliest possible opportunity, then it's much better outcomes for them, for their wider community, where they become more contributing. And also it actually has a hard edge for the National Health Service, because you're stopping potentially people going into services that are very expensive.
I mean, is it too simple to say there is an area of relative deprivation, life expectancy, joblessness, therefore it will be an area where mental health problems are prominent? Because those two don't always tally up. Sometimes they never tally up. Sometimes they always do. What's your reading on that?
I think you can't be too generalised around this. One of the things I've noticed about mental ill health in the last 8 years that I've been working with Merseycare is it's actually classless. It touches every area of society. Stress, depression, anxiety, these are in some respects the most common varieties and common occurrences of mental ill health, but they're absolutely everywhere. So yes, inevitably, if a community and individuals face real challenges, be they economic or otherwise or social, that's going to have an impact on their health and well-being.
So when Prince William walks in, and are you going to be the first one to shake his hand?
No, it'll be our chairman.
And then maybe you, and they'll say, so tell us about what you do here. How are you going to best summarise that? How are you best going to give him a flavour of what Life Rooms and the Life Rooms is all about?
We're going to show him it. It's not about just meeting me or other managers. It's actually about meeting the people who actually access our services, the people whose stories will demonstrate the impact that the service has had to their lives. So that's a real focus for the day, the time that he's with us, is he's going to be meeting real people with real lives, real stories, who are giving him an insight into the outcomes.
In terms of the use of the library building as well, there will be councils right around the country, and I presume NHS services right around the country as well, who are looking for solutions in terms of how they get their services to the people who need it the most, where they need it most, versus councils who are thinking, we need to get these libraries earning their own keep, we need to operate them in a different way. Do you think the setup that you've got through the Life Rooms is one which could be echoed around the country, that other people could look to what you're doing, see the space that you've got, the services that you offer, and also the outside services as well, which are provided within? And that's something which could happen in every library building or in every public building which might be at risk of closure because of various other means.
We definitely believe we're onto something that could be of national significance. It's a different way of working. It's looking at social solutions as opposed to the conventional clinical solutions. We do talk to an awful lot of people, be they councils, clinical commissioners, about the model. There's a lot of interest nationally from people coming to see what we do. Absolutely, we think that this is something that could be of benefit, that improves life outcomes and saves money to the state. One of the interesting things about the Life Rooms is the full array of partnerships that we have. So in excess of 40 partnerships providing a range of advice and support and education opportunities, many of whom we don't have to pay a penny for. It's quite simply marrying the need that we have together with existing provision that's already out there, be it from the voluntary sector, from councils, be it from the commercial world seeking to promote corporate social responsibility programmes. There's a lot of resource still out there to support people. I think what we've done in quite an innovative way is draw that together and show people how it can be done to get the maximum benefit.
And I guess as well, you guys, you're not a clinic and it's not a clinical environment. But when people see the NHS branding, I wonder whether or not they instantly associate it with having to be medicated or something like that. I wonder if that's a step change you've had to make with people, that you're trying to do you're trying to offer a social solution first and foremost to people, whereas people might associate NHS intervention with being something where you're going to find yourself in a clinic with a GP.
Sure. And I think that's probably a huge part of the innovation, is that people do have a stereotypical view of what the NHS is all about. They'll think about doctors, nurses, hospitals. This is a completely different way of doing healthcare, and it's very much focusing on individuals in front of you as assets who can affect change in their own lives and manage their own health. It's a far more effective way and a preventative way than quite a lot of the traditional services that have potentially been more reactive in the past. So we feel that one of the things we are very proud of is that we are from the NHS and that we have that safety, we have that authenticity. But actually, if you look at the Life Rooms website, or better still, you come along and visit us soon, you'll see that it doesn't look and feel like an NHS building. You know, the only NHS blue you'll see in there are on the staff's ID badges. The rest is really very different. It's very calming. It's an environment, it's a destination place, and it's not patronising. Any of us would want to go there, would want to spend time there, look forward to coming back again. It's a human environment, and that's key to us, that the environment has to be beautiful and hope-filled. That's not necessarily language you expect to hear from an NHS manager, but it is language that appeals to people, and for people to affect change in their own lives, we need to see our environment as a partner in what we do, and not simply a building in which we do stuff.
If people are walking past and the doors are open at either your Walton or Southport branches, can they just walk in?
Absolutely. Come on in.
Excellent stuff. And I'll just make this point as well. He's coming to town. He's coming to see the work that you do through Mercy Care. We do this show every Monday, and every Monday we're talking about really innovative stuff which is happening in Liverpool and the Merseyside region, which you get a sense isn't really happening in other places. Because sometimes you hear about stories from around the country and people in despair about certain aspects of mental health. And often I think, oh, actually, in Liverpool, there's such and such a service available. And I'm really getting the sense now that if there's like a mental health lead city in the country, that it appears to be Liverpool and the Liverpool City region, right? Do you think that's a fair thing to say?
I think it probably is. There's an awful lot of groundbreaking stuff that's going on here. You know, yesterday we marked World Suicide Prevention Day, and you will have seen an awful lot of stuff come out from our organisation about our suicide prevention strategy. You know, we're committed to a very ambitious target of zero suicide, and the Life Rooms is part of that. So again, we're not just trying to stop people taking their lives, we're trying to give them a reason to carry on living that is hope-filled. And I think we are one of very few places speaking out very loudly about these issues.
And long may that continue. Enjoy your royal appointment.
We will, definitely.
Do you have to iron your shirt extra?
I might even get a new tie.
Oh, steady on. Steady on. Michael, thank you for your time. Great to see you. Life Rooms Walton are now based at Southport. All the information, www.liferooms.org. That's liferooms.org. If you're listening on the podcast and this Thursday visit has already passed, we'll hopefully get Michael on again and he can tell us a little bit more about how the royal appointment went.
Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
This is Radio City Talk.
OK, next guest on the show, Sally Gunnell joining us, former Olympic, World, European and Commonwealth title holder, and also Professor Geoff Beattie. Guys, thank you for your time on the programme. We're going to touch on an issue which has been really prominent on this programme, and it's about mindfulness, and it's about, you know, dealing with everyday life in a mindful way. And Sally Gunnell, people will know you as a star, track and field. You're an author. You've written books about well-being as well now. Your take on this, if you can, from a point of view of somebody who's experienced real pressure in life and in work, both in the job you do now and the job you did within athletics as well. Just everyday life is big pressure now, isn't it, in 2017?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because people say to me, gosh, you must have been so much pressure 20 years ago. And I say, well, not really compared to now. And they'll say, well, how's that? I said, well, I think it's harder now because, you know, I'm a mum of 3. I'm trying to get them to school. I'm trying to get off to work. I'm trying to pick them up. I'm trying to cook a healthy meal. I'm trying to exercise, get them to exercise. And, you know, we are in this sort of roller coaster. And it's interesting because Gusto, the recipe box company, put this all this information together and this survey that they've done, and actually 70% of people have massive expectations of themselves and what they think that they should achieve in a day. And a lot of that has come down to social media. It's come down to what we see on Facebook that your neighbour's doing or your best friend's doing or on your phone or whatever it is. And we're all trying to live up to that expectation. And that's really hard to do. And you know, I'm exactly the same. And it's, you know, it's finding, you don't want that to overtake your life. And it's finding different ways of whatever that may be to be able to try and cope with that situation.
Yeah, and was it easy when you were an athlete because you had certain goals, you had certain training methods and so on and so forth? You kind of knew what you were getting from life, whereas now there's sort of added expectation, isn't there? You know, we Katarina Johnson-Thompson is an athlete we have here in Liverpool who's got so much pressure on her because of the weight of expectation placed upon her, but she's acting now in a different way. She's performing now in a different way, in a different sort of amphitheatre than maybe the likes of you, Linford Christie, were back in 1992.
Yeah, it is different, but I think when you're an athlete, and for Kat, you have to be quite selfish, and what you eat and what you train is your everyday thought, and that's that's your job, and that's what you're doing. Whereas now what I find is quite hard is that you're trying to to be a mum like so many others. You're trying to work, and you're trying to be this perfect mum, which we see and we watch in on papers or in social media, and it's hard to be able to live that. And I think it's to me, it's finding ways, and I guess for me that whole sort of thing around food and nutrition is really key to how we perform as a person in our day-to-day, the concentration and all those sorts of things. So family life is really key, and having time to sit down with my boys, cooking a meal, getting them to cook a meal in 35 minutes or whatever it takes and prepare is throw away the phone. Here we are. This is our time. And I think that is the key. We can't live that perfect life. We can't live up to that expectation. And so what can we do? What changes can we make to be able to, not beat ourselves up day after day?
If only we had a professor of psychology alongside us from the award-winning Edge Hill University. Geoff Beattie's on the programme as well. Geoff, thank you for your time too. It's interesting that Sally mentioned there the idea of seeing the perfect lifestyle, the perfect mum, being viewed through social media. What is it in our brains which makes us believe that these are perfect mums and perfect lifestyles? Whereas we know when we put in our own social media up that we tweak the truths, we pick out the certain photos, we delete other. We know that goes on, don't we, Geoff?
We certainly do, but of course that assumes that human beings are rational creatures. I'm not sure they are. I mean, we've got a huge social brain. I mean, and part of how human beings learn is by imitating other people, of course, and learning from others. And part of that learning process is social comparison. It's just something we do automatically. And you mentioned mindfulness, and of course the reason that's important is that so many of these processes are automatically kind of programmed into the brain. And as Sally says, I think the pressure of modern life comes from this notion that it's not just about excelling at your work or having a happy family life. It's about being perfect in every aspect of it. And what's really interesting in terms of this research by Gusto is that in some sense, people knew that the expectations were unrealistic. I mean, that's the extraordinary thing. They kind of knew that the pressure wasn't, they were never going to meet them, but nevertheless, that they still produced a very strong emotional response when they failed to live up to it. They still felt incredible guilt when they didn't meet these expectations. And I think the problem is that in terms of Facebook and social media, it's these images that are presented, these images that we cannot get out of our minds. I mean, I could describe to you images I've seen of some people who've had perfect meals they've cooked over the last couple of weeks. I mean, those images are implanted in my head. And of course, the point about images is they don't fade quite as quickly as kind of other kinds of information that people might tell us. So I think there is something about social media which is added to that pressure. It's increasing what's expected of us, and we're all trying to aspire to these very, kind of impossible goals, and I think that's where the psychological pressure comes from.
But I guess, Sally, if somebody said to you, right, you're doing the long jump today, you go, well, that's not a competition that I can win. If I've got to do it, I'll try, but then I won't win, and then maybe you feel worse as a result of that, whereas actually your skills lie elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think that's what people have to realise, isn't it? And there's no point. It doesn't matter if we can't do it. I think it's something about trying, but also I think it's like we can't be perfect in every area, which is what we're all trying to do, isn't it? And I think my boys are 19, 16 and 12, and you see the social media and what they look at and this perfect body and all these sorts of things, and it's really hard, and I think some of it is sometimes being able to have a time to be able to talk about those things and to and I think that's one of the areas that almost goes because you're charging out the door. So I think that's where we go back to. It's like, right, okay, where are you going to put in that quality time with them? What does that look like? And I think there's a whole thing around that whole meal time, and where does food come from, and how do you cook food, and all those sorts of things that being questioned at the moment. So I think it's a really good place to sort of start as a family, just to try and connect and engage back again.
Guys, thank you for your time. I've only had a little bit of time with you today, but I really appreciate your thoughts on that matter.
Lovely.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's brilliant stuff. From Sally Gunnell, OBE, of course, and also Geoff Beattie from the award-winning Edge Hill University. They're Professor of Psychology. It's Radio City Talk.
Radio City Talks Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
A busy one on Mental Health Monday this week. Podcast listeners, you're about to get a little bit extra, but don't worry about that. If you're listening live on the radio, you can always share your Mental Health Monday stories via the email address, simply mick@radiocity.co.uk. That's mick@radiocity.co.uk. Mental Health Monday, every Monday, here on Radio City
Mental
Talk.
Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
This is Radio City Talk.
Let's talk now about World Suicide Prevention Day, happening on the 10th of September. This is Sunday, of course, and let's speak to David Ashton, who joins in the studio, the director of the Liverpool Samaritans. Dave, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Mick.
World Suicide Prevention Day. You're obviously a local organisation that feeds into a wider organisation as well. And the 10th of September, normally when there's a day like this, I ask the guest, what's the theme? I think World Suicide Prevention is pretty clear, isn't it?
It is. It certainly gives a clue about what's going to happen on Sunday. But the key is just raising awareness around the world about the work that can be done to prevent suicide. Because at Samaritans, we really do feel quite strongly that it is preventable, and that's why we exist as an organisation. So on Sunday, we'll have a number of activities going on, and one of the key things will be, I believe the technical term is washing a number of buildings in green, just to raise awareness about Samaritans and that we are there all day, every day, for anyone who needs to contact us.
Yeah, and I guess this is one of those days where you get the focus on it. But actually what you're saying is, look, we're here today, but we're also here tomorrow, we're here tomorrow night, we're here the day after that, we'll be here next November, next December and beyond.
Absolutely. I think we're one of the few organisations where our volunteers work through the night, because that's our busiest time. Certainly between, say, 10 p.m. through to 6 a.m. We see a huge surge in calls at that time because there's nowhere else open for people to go to. So everyone phones Samaritans. I think so many people do also feel that Samaritans may not be for them because they associate us with suicide. But we are there for everyone. And if people got in touch with us much earlier, they'd hopefully be able to talk about what they're feeling and, alleviate some of those distressing feelings that lead to despair.
Tell us about the number of calls that you would receive. Give us an example maybe of how many calls you've received in 2017 so far.
So far, I believe we've received just over 40,000 calls this year. So we're going to take more than 50,000 calls overall this year. And that'll be our busiest year since 1960 when we opened. As an organisation, we've taken 5.7 million calls in 2016. So there's a lot of demand for our service at the moment.
Now, how do you weigh that up in terms of your own thoughts as an organisation about why people are calling? Because I think there's been much more, people are getting much more open-minded about the idea of speaking about mental health. Do you associate that rise with that, or do you associate the rise with people finding themselves in worse situations, or is it impossible to know?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. There's been so many cuts to funding across the charitable sector and across the public sector that some organisations have just disappeared, and therefore more and more people having to contact Samaritans because nearly every service points to us out of hours. In addition to that, I think one of the great things, say, along with your Mental Health Mondays podcast and other shows, and just society general, it's becoming a lot more open about talking about almost any taboo that once existed. And certainly now, when people are talking about their feelings, that's great, but it does lead to more people contacting us, which is what we want. We want people to get in touch with Samaritans so that we can help them move on from what's going through their mind at that point.
In terms of the facilities that you've got, are you able to take that number of calls? Have you got the space to take that number of calls?
We've got the space and the capacity. What we don't have is enough volunteers. As a branch here in Liverpool, we've grown drastically over the last 18 months. But what we need to do is continue that period of taking on board more volunteers. So it's not an easy process to become a volunteer. It's very in-depth training because everyone needs to be prepared. Because when you pick up that phone or reply to a text or an email, there's somebody on the other end who could be in quite a distressing situation, and we need to ensure our volunteers can support them with what that person needs at the time. But we do encourage anyone who thinks it may be for them to come forward and find out more. So every month we hold an information session where potential volunteers can hear more about what it's like to volunteer with Samaritans. But also we are now running training 5 times a year. So we've just started another training group now, and we'll be taking another group on in October. So if anyone's thinking about becoming a volunteer, it would be great if they gave us a call on Liverpool 709 1100, or went onto our website where they can find out more.
And what we'll do, we'll repeat all those things and we'll give people a big heads up as to where they can find out more information. We've got David Ashton with us in the studio, Director of Liverpool Samaritans. World Suicide Prevention Day, the 10th of September 2017. But David's saying absolutely, Liverpool Samaritans will be there 24/7. You say expanded over the last 18 months. Tell us about the expansion and why you've had the need to expand.
I suppose we've needed to expand because more and more people are getting in touch with us. Partly, as you mentioned before, the cuts and the impact that has on society, and indeed people just being more willing to talk about what's going on. Samaritans is much more flexible as an organisation to volunteer with than it may have been in the past. And it's something that really can fit into everyone's lives as a volunteer. We're only talking about a few hours a week, but that can really make a difference. And one of our messages for World Suicide Prevention Day is that just take a minute to change your life, because talking to people can just make a huge difference to them. So in terms of people coming to Samaritans to volunteer with us, I think because we've actually added 3 more phone lines to our building in Liverpool, that's created more opportunities for people to volunteer, and we're also open earlier than we used to for volunteers in the morning.
If people want to get involved in this one, we'll give everyone all the information that if they can support Liverpool Samaritans. You say you can do just a few hours a week, but there's the training that you get at the start as well, which I guess is really interesting training because it's kind of counselling, but it also gives you an insight into sort of the issues that you might be facing, which I'm sure people can take it into their everyday lives as well, about how they can speak to people, the best way of speaking to people, and maybe spotting if somebody might be in trouble themselves.
Absolutely. I think when people finish training, one of the things that a lot of people say is that it's changed their life as well. So not in a way of providing the volunteer with their own emotional mechanisms to cope, but just making people much more aware about how we speak to each other and how often people don't listen to what's being said. I think so often people are thinking about the next thing to say when we're in a conversation rather than listening to what somebody is actually saying to them. And it can really enhance how people communicate with each other. And I know myself, it's made me much more aware of both what people are saying and also what they're not saying, and picking up on those clues when something might be, not quite right with a friend or a colleague. And it can change people's lives for the better. So often when people come to volunteer with Samaritans, they do end up staying for many, many years.
It's such an incredible responsibility as well, because as you say that when you pick up the phone, it's you picking up a phone, but then the experience that you're about to have is the equivalent of you stood on the edge of a cliff and somebody walking up to you with the intention of metaphorically, stepping over the edge, if you like. You are the last line for some people before they might choose to take their own life. That's an incredible responsibility that you take on. Is there any way of sort of preparing people for that kind of responsibility?
I suppose what many people say that our training is excellent compared to any training we've had, and we've got people who work professionally in this area, and they still say Samaritans training was the best they've experienced, because it does go in depth and it prepares people for what they're going to encounter on the phone. It wouldn't be responsible of Samaritans to let people go on the telephone unless they're fully prepared. And obviously we're a completely confidential organisation, but anecdotally, someone who recently completed training, their first call was somebody who was standing on the edge of an area. And they were
literally?
Literally,
right.
And they were able to gently talk to that person, get them the help and support they need, and also arrange for them to go into their local branch where they were in the country to see someone face to face. And that was somebody's first call. But the training is so in depth that it does prepare people to cope with whatever they may face on the phone. And there's so much support available for volunteers. So say if somebody was listening now and maybe thinking about becoming a volunteer, but they were worried about what they may be taking on themselves emotionally, there's a support mechanism for Samaritan volunteers in place as well.
Do you have anyone who comes to you as a volunteer who has been on the other end of the phone, maybe in the past, that they've been in a dark place and they've maybe come back from that brink and they've turned their lives around and they want to get involved because the Samaritans had such a big impact on their life?
We do, and it can be really helpful for people who've been through that situation as well, both to recognise how far they've come and also they know firsthand what it feels like. We do have a very in-depth selection process because sometimes people come to us when we're looking for help, and what they really need is to contact the helpline. But people in that situation can still come back in the future, because as we say to volunteers, we could all be a caller on our bad days. You never know when something's going to happen in your life that could really turn things upside down. But what we do know is that Samaritans will always be there for people, and it's free of charge on 116 123.
Yeah, and we get all those information, those contact points forward as well. And David, I mean, I've got to ask you, World Suicide Prevention Day, operates around the world. We've covered many times on this programme, that the figures around young men, the likelihood of them compared to women to commit suicide, 75% to 25%, with the figure I read just yesterday as well. You won't keep a log of the reasons that people are talking about why they feel suicidal. But do you get a sense from the calls that you've received and the stories that you hear from fellow callers about, particular issues? Is there anything which has maybe sprung up in the last 18 months, issues that people are facing, which actually people in other sectors might actually be able to do something about, which would mean that, the need for services like yourself would be lessened because other people might be able to do something government level, local government level, or whatever level it might be?
It's a bit early to pull out the themes from this year, but speaking generally from the feedback we've had from volunteers, a lot of people are getting in touch because the services that they were once using is now closed. And we would call on the government and local authorities to ensure that they do provide funding to the services that are needed by people. Samaritans as an organisation doesn't receive any funding at all here in Liverpool. It's all reliant on the kind donations of members of the public. So we're really lucky that we're still here, and that's because of a commitment that volunteers put into the organisation. But we do know, generally speaking, from callers that we're receiving, there is a need for other services in the city.
If people want to get support you, want to become involved as a volunteer, Liverpool Samaritans, if you type that into any search engine, all the information comes up as well. You mentioned a number 709 1100. If people want to get involved in the volunteering side of things, 709, that's 0151, of course, 709 1100. And then the Samaritans number, if people just want to call the Samaritans because they feel the need to do so, that number again is
116 123.
And we'll get all that information up on our social media too. David, thank you for your time. Best of luck for both World Suicide Prevention Day, but also for the great work that you do 24/7, and to all your volunteers who do wonderful work as well. And we'll get all that information up on our social media so you can support Liverpool Samaritans. Get involved as a volunteer if you want, or if you need those services. Those services are available to you.
Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
This is Radio City Talk.